Hi, I'm Claire, and welcome to the Claire Closet for Feist Female Entrepreneurs in Small Towns. I am so excited because here we are, our first episode on the road in Toronto, Ontario, interviewing the incredible Noreen Flanagan, the editor-in-chief of Fashion Canada. Welcome.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for us being in your house, your birdhouse. So
anytime.
Thank you so much. This is really exciting because Noreen has been someone that I've been talking to for on and off, bugging you for 7 years, and here we are. This is a big moment for myself and the team to have the chance to sit down and talk to you. So first, what does a week look like in the life of Noreen? You're all over the place, and being the editor-in-chief of the biggest fashion magazine in Canada right now, what does your life look like?
Well, it changes actually from week to week, which is partly why I love my life so much. I think if I could plan it out weeks and weeks in advance, it would be too tedious for me. So last week, for example, I was spending quite a bit of time in New York, as it ended up an extra day in New York because of the weather, but that's never a hardship. We almost you go up and they're saying your flight's canceled, and I'm like, yes! Because I wanted to go and see in the windows of Bergdorf an artist that we're working with on a very special project for our November issue, and I hadn't been able to.
We can't know yet, right? It's top secret.
Top secret. Top
Stay
secret.
tuned.
But it's very exciting.
And okay, so what else?
So what do I do?
You've been what's your life looking like?
Well, if we're on production, as we were last week as well, I'm approving stories. I'm doing sort of substantive edits on them. I'm meeting with writers. We're chatting about future stories. Spending a lot of time with the art team as well as we put the piece together, trying to figure out what the cover lines might be, chatting with my publisher about that, meeting with advertisers, coming up with co-branded projects. It really varies.
Noreen was at Elle Canada for how many years?
15 years.
15 years, and you were the editor-in-chief at Elle for
almost 7
almost
years
7 years. So that's considerable time to make a huge impact in the fashion scene. But then you've moved recently. How long has it been you're now at Fashion? How long has it been here?
I am weeks away from being there almost a year.
Almost a year.
Which blows my mind.
It's
just gone by so quickly.
I remember messaging me, congratulations.
Yeah.
Holy moly, that's fast. So why did you move over to fashion?
Well, I had been with Elle, like I say, for 15 years and loved it immensely. It's an amazing, beautiful brand. But I was at a point in my career where I was interested in working for a brand that owns its brand, because you can be a lot more experimental. And in our industry at this moment, this is a time of great upheaval and great challenge, but also I kind of like that. And I wanted to be with a company that had ownership over its brand,
autonomy
to allow for that kind of flexibility. So we've really had a lot of fun in the last year doing things that really kind of go against the grain of
Can you tell us about
sure.
Because I know you, I get so excited because you said having a little bit more freedom has really opened up. So share, what have you been working on?
Well, even the first one, and you're seeing it on some newsstands, but we're really moving away from loud sort of cover lines. We're moving toward a very strong, I'll show this up. This was a great honor when we shot Sophie for our March cover. And
colors are gorgeous.
Yeah, and there's something really confident about coming forward with one clean, clear message for readers. In this case, it was all about meeting the women who are changing the world, and certainly she's one of them.
and you are.
Well, I don't know if I'm in that camp, but
yes,
it certainly was.
Sure are.
It was an immense pleasure to profile the women, because I think for me, when I took on this particular brand as well, I wanted to expand its mandate. So it wasn't just about fashion in the very strict sense of the word, what we wear and our style or how we do our hair. For me, it was really about what it meant to lead a fashionable life. And that's certainly what you wear, it's how you do your hair, all of those things, but it's who you talk to, it's the books you read, it's the music you listen to, it's the places you travel to, it's the dreams that you have. That to me is all about creating this fashionable life that I inspired to lead, and certainly I hope we were able to do that with our readers as well. So that was the start of it. So getting rid of cover lines, going with one really clear message was one of the first changes.
That's awesome.
And then I also wanted to really remind people about the beauty of print. Even though we do live in a post-digital phase, I thought, okay, how do we recreate or reimagine a post-digital magazine? What does that look like? Well, one thing that you can't replicate by picking up something
Yeah.
technical.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
we have
always
paper here.
that way.
You want to touch it.
Yeah.
So what we did, we worked with Coco Rocha, who is an incredible Canadian.
So this is
talent.
before, okay, yeah.
So we took 5 cover shots of Coco, and we did 5 different makeup looks, hair looks, different accessories. And then what the reader gets to do is actually rip the pages
Which
open,
is, yeah, do you want me to?
which is what this is. But what's really cool about this
Wow.
is that you created 35 covers based on how you
That's,
configured the different pieces.
Is okay.
But what was really fun, I had so many people write me letters saying they had so much fun
Oh.
actually playing with the magazine. And that's exactly what I wanted people to do. So this whole issue, though, it was said here, was IRL versus URL. And when these two worlds collide, what's it like? What's unique about what happens in the real world and what's unique about what happens in IRL? It wasn't that one world's better than the other.
Right.
Or the
Complementary.
other. Yeah, they're complementary and distinct, and it's about not losing what's special
Yeah.
about both of them. So that's what we hope to do with that one.
And this is what I love, because, and I'm going to jump in here, is Noreen, you know, when you're in something for so long, here she is, you know, 25 years into the job, she's cutting up magazines and like you're an
Playing.
entrepreneur. Yeah, you're always keeping really innovative, and it's inspiring, and I love it. And
Well,
this
thank
one
you.
was really,
Thank
I
you.
love this one.
This was another one, again, where I wanted to have people interact with the book and have it be a tactile experience. I probably broke one of the biggest rules in the fashion, magazine world, in the sense that we have a horse actually on the cover. We do not have a human, although we did have a human, because if you peel this back to reveal, you'll see our model underneath.
How to get
So
it.
that was a lot of fun. So yeah, you got to pick this up, peel to reveal. And again, I got a really sweet letter from one woman it was her lunch break. She needed a distraction. She was going to go sit in the park. And of course, she was attracted to the beautiful colors. And then she said, I thought, wow, there's just a horse on the cover. Like, what's that about? And of course, she saw the peel to reveal. She thought, I have to peel to reveal. She bought it, went in the park, had a lovely cup of coffee, and went with us on this adventure to Mexico City. In particular, this was shot at Luis Barragan's home, which was so inspiring. I would say this shoot was probably one of the highlights of my career so far. It was, for me, all the sweet spots of fashion and beauty and architecture coming together, along with this amazing telenovela worthy story.
She was telling me the whole story. I don't know if we have time to go through the whole story, but it was a telenovela. Like, it was so dramatic, and you are a hustler because you got into the house to shoot that it wasn't open to the public, right?
No, she does 2 fashion shoots a year, and she'd never had a Canadian come to her ranch, so she agreed to let us. But it is a long story, but it's worth it. You can go online and read about Luis Barragan, and I think the story that actually started all this for me was in the New Yorker, and it was called "The Architect Who Was Turned into a Diamond." And he actually was turned into a diamond. That's a little bit creepy. Yeah.
I forgot
We don't have to
about
go into that.
It's fascinating because there's so much history that you look at a magazine and you think, oh, it's nice.
Yeah.
And then when you dig deeper or you talk to the source, you're like, there's so much history. And you said architecture, there's people that are involved, all these locals that are really contributing to this. And that's what I think is special about the work you do.
Well, then the other rule that I broke most recently,
Of course.
I think the people in the circulation department, they see me coming and they think, oh no, honestly, what are you doing this month?
Do you sleep at night?
Well, the other thing that you're never supposed to do is have a cover model with her eyes closed, because she's to engage with you.
Okay.
Well,
Not this one.
not this one. We shot Gigi Gorgeous, and I really
this is what
wanted people to look at that image and hopefully be curious about who is that
Who
woman
is?
and what is she thinking, because she was having a really wonderful moment at this point, because we had taken Gigi and kind of transformed her that day through fashion
That's so
into a woman that she'd never really seen herself in that light before. Anyone who knows Gigi Gorgeous, she has a particular look online.
Yes, no, I know, and that's why it caught my eye. When you did some neat stuff online with it.
It was a lot of fun, and to see her, she was very open about it, and to see the transformation that took place that day when she put on these different pieces of clothing. It was a magical day. And this whole issue is kind of dedicated to people who are breaking rules, in particular along gender lines. So she was kind of our cover model for it. But certainly the theme throughout the book kind of explored other, men and women and designers who are challenging kind of how we, make that divide in the world. So again, it speaks to fashion being more than just about fashion. It is a reflection of what's happening in society, what's happening in culture, what's happening in politics. And I think Gigi was a perfect role model for that.
And you're a perfect journalist for what you do. Like, it's so much more than fashion, right? Like you said, it embodies so much. Now, you look at someone like Noreen and you think, how did she get here? Like, you are sitting on, like, you tell these stories, traveling the world, meeting with all these incredible people. You are living a dream job for a lot of people to see, and you do love it. But you have an amazing story that comes with it. And I think it's really neat to show the transformation of where you started and how you've got here. So can you, in your, you're so eloquent when you share.
Give you my spiel?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's Noreen's story? How did you get here?
How did I get here? Well,
how did I get here?
How did we all get here? I think back, actually, I think I was probably in grade 4, and we had to do those, personality tests where it decides what you should do with your life. Well, I don't know what bizarro answers I did, but it came back that I should be a taxidermist, which makes absolutely no sense, and I didn't even know what that was. And I remember going home to my mother, going home to my mom saying, "I guess I should be a taxidermist. What is that?" Thank God I did not pursue taxidermy. But anyway, so all to say to anyone, if some test tells you that you should be something, you don't necessarily have to be that. On that note,
if I was a circus performer, it said #1 circus performer.
Performer.
But I kind of like the idea still. I'm coming back to it.
No, see, that's fun. Being a taxidermist, not so much.
This is grade 4, though. Okay, so you didn't become
I didn't become a taxidermist. I moved, I finished my high school, actually, in Germany. And I remember at the time we had to apply to come back to Canada to go to university, and I absolutely had no idea what I was going to do with my life at that point.
Like many of us.
Yes, and I come from, a large Irish Catholic family, and I think my father had hoped at least one of his children would either be a nun or a priest. That wasn't going to happen. So I think he realized maybe the closest thing, she seems nice, maybe she could be a nurse. It's almost like a calling. It's almost like a religious calling. Yeah. So I thought, yeah, sure, why not? So I ticked it and applied, and sure enough, I suddenly found myself sitting in nursing class going, I remember the first week thinking, I don't know about this. I think I've made a mistake.
It's hard too, nursing's not easy.
It is, and I just didn't know that was maybe right for me, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And nursing is like a lot of very defined professions. Yeah. Once you get in that stream, you can appreciate that from being a teacher as well. There's all sorts of kind of social, personal, family pressures. Like you suddenly aren't Noreen anymore. You're a nurse. You're a teacher, and I found it very stifling. Yeah. So the first year went by, second year went by, third year went by, and then fourth year went by, and I thought, well, I still don't know what I'm going to do. But I thought, I'm going to work for a year, and I'm going to save everything that I own, and I'm going to go traveling, and I'm going to ask everyone I meet what they do. And I'm going to find out.
That's the journalist in you. You didn't even know.
I didn't even know it. And I thought, at the end of it, I am going to know what I'm going to do with my life. So I did. I saved all my pennies, and then I traveled for a year.
Did anyone think you were crazy?
No, my mother thought I was completely
something was wrong,
deranged, because at a certain point I was actually traveling through Iran, and that was during the Iran-Iraq war. So it was 1980.
You went all.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you're
I did. Well, I took a flight to London, and then I took a bus, a double-decker bus. They don't do this anymore. From London to Kathmandu. So imagine every country. So we were through Syria and Jordan and Israel, Turkey, Iran, Pakistan, India, all the way up to Kathmandu. But we did have to go through Iran for, I think it was 9 days. We had a transit visa. And I think that was the part where my mom just thought, this is ridiculous. And when she kept saying to my brother, like, what are we going to tell the press when she's kidnapped? I mean, I thought, you're being very dramatic. And I remember just saying to her, why are you not celebrating my curiosity? Yeah. Of course, now that I'm older, I can appreciate why a mother would not necessarily embrace the fact that her daughter was doing that. But I did, and I got all the way through to Kathmandu, and I thought, oh my God! I'm asking everybody what they do, and nothing really kind of resonated with me.
Right.
And then I shared, the famous rickshaw ride with a journalist who was going to volunteer at a clinic that I was thinking about maybe doing some volunteer work at. Asked her what she did, blah, 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 my usual spiel. And then literally it was like the penny dropped. I thought, well, that's what I want to do with my life. And
well, you
so
were already doing it.
I was
too,
already
right?
doing
Like,
it without knowing it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that would be my one piece of advice.
Yeah.
Think about the things that you do that bring you joy,
Yeah.
because that actually is what you should be doing with
What
your
you're
life.
already doing, yeah.
And I didn't really kind of analyze it in that way. But really, the penny dropped at that point, and I thought that is what I want to do. So I finished up my travels. I still had,
Oh, no.
well, I still, there was love in the middle of all of that. I had to go back to Norway and work at a ski resort for a while, but that's another story. So I did that, and then eventually came back to Canada and moved to Vancouver. And I had to work for a year to earn some money to go back to school. So I worked in the emergency department, emergency psychiatry at Vancouver General Hospital.
Wow, that would be intense.
That was very intense. Excellent training for a reporter, because especially in an emergency department, you have to triage, you have to make quick decisions, you have to get stories out of people that are either very distressed or very disturbed in their thinking, or they're fantastic liars, or they're drugs. Like it was great. It was great training for being a reporter. So I did that for a year, and then I went to journalism school, and then I was a newspaper reporter.
Toronto?
In Vancouver.
Oh, Vancouver. Okay.
I went to Langara. Did that for a year, and then I moved to Vancouver Island, and I got my first job at the Parksville Qualicum News. Did everything. So you were taking photographs, you were developing those photographs, you were practically cutting and pasting it. Like it gets in your blood, because you literally do everything. By the time that newspaper goes to the plant, you've touched every part of it and left tears of hard work and sweat. So I did that for a number of years, and then I went to a daily newspaper.
Okay.
And then I covered...
Still in Vancouver?
Yeah, Vancouver Island. And I covered courts, crime, and politics. I wanted to, it was really funny. My first day on my job, I was quite cocky, and I said to the editor, I'm not doing health. Like, you can't just see me as a nurse, therefore I can only write about health.
So,
I refuse. I refuse. And so he said, okay, fine. And so my first assignment was to go to a bar to write a story about a dart competition that was going on.
And you're like, maybe I changed my mind. Health's fine.
No, I thought, okay, I know, I get your point, but I'm going to not leave this bar until I find a great story. And I did. I found some fun, amusing stories, mother-daughter dart duos. It was lovely, actually. And he, I think, conceded at the end that I could write about things other than health. Yeah. I later did write about health when I worked at Flair, actually.
Okay.
So how that whole story comes along. So I'm working in a newspaper in Nanaimo at this point, and then I met my husband, who sat across literally the table from me. He was another reporter.
No way.
And we fell in love, and then decided to get married and sell everything, and we drove down to Latin America or Central America for just under a year, and we lived out of our truck and tent. And then eventually, whenever I run out of money, I always have to return and become responsible. So we drove back up to Toronto, and I started working. I did software, high tech, which was a crazy phase because I didn't know anything about it. And I was, I think, representing companies who produce routers. I still don't know what routers are, and I was helping them to get coverage.
You learned quickly.
Well, I don't know that I did. But I still remember the day back when people still advertised for jobs in newspapers. And there was this tiny little ad that said they were looking for a health editor at Flair. And I thought, oh my God, the stars have aligned. I can get on routers. So I applied and got the job. And then was very happy to write about health.
Yeah.
And
isn't that interesting?
Then embraced it. So it really, you never... That's a good lesson in life. You think you've gone down this wrong path. And really, in my early 20s, I was very angry at myself that I had not had the insight to know what I wanted to do. And I felt I had wasted those 4 years in journalism or at nursing school. But, life's funny that way. It prepared me in all sorts of ways, both for life, but also for the job that got me to where I am today. I mean, I don't think they got a lot of applications from nurses who had also been reporters. So that's how I got into Flair, and I was there for 3 years, and then Al came a calling, and I moved over to Al.
Wow.
And then
I feel like there's so many. I could ask you so many questions. Like
That's a long spiel,
yeah,
sorry.
no. There's so many more I want to ask, but I know we could be here all day.
I think I did it better for you once. I think I got it under 2 minutes or something.
Yeah, but now that you're hearing more, I want to know more. So
Okay.
maybe, well, episode 2. Now you mentioned something that it's interesting because you touched on this pressure, having to know what you had to do. And I think we all go through this thinking like, why haven't I figured it out? What's my calling? Whether you're 22, 42, or 62, I feel like we go through points where like, who am I? Like, what do I have to, like, what am I supposed to be doing? When you were, a nurse and all these things, can you now look back and see that some of these skills are transferred into what you're doing today? How has it benefited you having all these journeys and different jobs?
Well, nursing is great training for all kinds of things. For one, you get very good at triaging what are the most important things that you have to attend to.
Yeah.
You get very good at reading people, both
Yeah.
their verbal, what they say, and more importantly, what they don't say,
Right.
which was very helpful especially when I was a reporter covering politicians.
Yeah.
It was very helpful. And I think too, it gives you perspective on life and what's really important. And so I know various times over the years I would have younger staff getting very upset and nervous about deadlines, and I'm always just very calm. And it's like, look, no one's dying. There's no blood.
You're like, literally no one's dying.
It's all good. It's all good. We'll stay focused and we'll get things done. So I think
the high emergency situations
it gives you that perspective, for sure, absolutely. And I have truly nothing but immense respect for the women and men who do that full time. I know how emotionally kind of draining that is, and it's a real labor of love, and it requires creativity and intelligence and compassion, and so I have immense respect for them. And there are days where I feel just grateful I had that experience, but also very grateful for the experiences that I get to enjoy today,
side of it,
that are just so over the top in their elegance and their creativity, and sometimes their exclusivity, for sure.
Right.
Like I was just recently back from a trip in France, and it was.
I know. I was watching all your pictures.
Sorry
I'm like,
about that.
Noreen, can I come? In your suitcase?
Well, and we got to go to the home of called La Pausa, and this was a home that Coco Chanel built for herself in the 1920s. And it was the first time that she built something from scratch that was a true representation of who she was and what she valued, and more importantly, where she came from, because there's lots of architectural features that echo the orphanage that she grew up in France, that she never really liked to admit that she grew up in an orphanage. She came from very, very humble kind of circumstances. So we were the first journalists to get into this home, which the House of Chanel just recently bought back 2 years ago and has been renovating. And so we got to go inside, which in itself, because I do love architecture as well.
No, you bring that up.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And then inside the house, there was their latest haute couture collection. So it was 62 pieces of the most exquisite, one-of-a-kind jewels that were inspired by La Pausa, but also inspired by the love affair that she had with the Duke of Westminster and his flying cloud, the yacht that he used to park. It's the size of this apartment building, that he used to park in the bay just down from her home. So great romance, great history, and just exquisite jewels. I kept feeling like I was on the set for a James Bond jewelry heist.
I feel like did you try anything on?
Oh no, there were lots of it was fun. I kept expecting men in dark suits though to come down from the sky and go in and steal it, but it just had that sort of European movie heist theme about it.
And that's the thing, it makes it's so neat that you're able to appreciate that, but maybe because you appreciate it so much because you've seen other industries, other worlds, and you can see how grateful you are and how you can use that. And
it's how luxurious it is and how rare it is. And even the next day we were talking to the head of the jewelry department, and he was saying this is a once in a lifetime experience for us as well. We'll never build that tent. They built a tent for that one night only, to serve dinner to 106 of us from around the world. He said so it was really, for them it was still really, really special.
Too.
So for me it was just one of those remarkable moments. And I think earlier in the day, we even got to tour Eileen Gray's home. And it's another woman that I was very inspired by the work that she did back in the 20s, from an architecture point of view.
Well, that's why I like you always bring the architecture in. More than it just being clothing, there's stories. You love stories. I love stories.
And actually, that's what nursing's all about too. Like you're really, aside from getting
diagnosis comes from their story.
Yes, and it's what they have experienced in their life, and getting that narrative out really helps to shape the kind of care that you could give them.
That's really neat.
So it was it
really
enriched
like that.
my storytelling for sure.
That's very eloquently put. I like that, actually. I'll have to make sure I write that one down too. Now, when you're listening to Noreen and you're hearing little clippets of her life and stuff, and I remember when I first was trying to get into fashion stuff, people were like, Claire, it's really competitive. And as soon as you hear that, they're like, it's kind of like this, well, I don't know if you can get into it because it's really competitive, assuming that, you don't have what it takes or whatnot. But now that, I've had so many amazing opportunities in fashion and meeting you and seeing you doing all these incredible things, how are you able today, because there's so much noise, so much competition, how do you stay, and I know this is the word I'm going to say, how do you stay relevant yet authentic? And I guess this is a trending term, and you can elaborate, but what do you do? Because you are one of the most authentic people I've ever met, especially at the level of work that you do.
Well, thank you. It's interesting. We were talking a little bit earlier. You're right. I think there seems to be a heightened interest in authenticity at the moment. And people say, in an age of inauthenticity that we have now with social media, to some extent, irony and kind of these fabricated artifices or these fabricated lives trump truth. And I think we're hungry to get back to knowing what's real. And so we actually dedicated our whole September issue to exploring this idea, because it was something that was just popping up in my conversations and my experiences. And it really started in Milan Fashion Week, and I was backstage talking to one of the makeup artists, and he was saying that the designers this year really wanted them to create real woman, real beauty with real hair. And I was thinking, are you being ironic? Because you don't normally associate runway beauty with real women. There's usually there's a huge aspirational component to it.
Right.
But he was saying at the time, Instagram makeup, and he was a very emotional Italian, but he thought it was a dangerous transformations going on, and women were forgetting who they were and celebrating their own beauty, and that there was an artifice being layered on. So that was kind of the start of it. And then I started hearing about it from different fashion designers who were doing deconstructed kind of pieces and introducing kind of handcrafted elements, because they thought it rendered the clothing more authentic, not something that was mass produced or manufactured. And then I started going to fragrance launches, and all of the marketing material around it. I was at the Gucci launch in New York, and Alessandro was saying that he was very much inspired to create a fragrance that a woman who wanted to be authentic would want to wear. So I thought, oh God, there's that word again. And then I went to the Chanel launch, which their fragrance is coming out in September. It's called Gabrielle. And again, the whole idea behind it was to celebrate Coco and her desire to lead an authentic life, and the woman who would want to wear it.
Interesting,
So
eh?
that was interesting.
So with all this, it's a talked about thing in the sense that it must be needed. Like people are looking for some sort of authenticity. What's authenticity to you then? What is it in the work that you're doing? Because I know it's this thing that you keep seeing, but how do you internalize it?
Well, it was interesting. We asked a lot of the people that we were interviewing that month how they defined it.
Yeah.
And so I had the opportunity to speak to Kristen Stewart, who is the face of
I
Chanel
saw
fragrance, and I asked her that as well, because
Interesting.
she is a incredibly intelligent, passionate, focused woman, and I think that this is a subject that she does think a lot about.
Right.
And she was saying that for her it was about finally trusting that feeling in her stomach and having the confidence to kind of override the fear that you sometimes associate with those feelings, that you know what you need to do, but your fear stops you.
Yeah.
But then it was interesting, we also spoke to Katie Lang, and she's a very committed Buddhist, and she's obsessed with the idea of authenticity and the fact that you really can't ever be authentic or have it, because as soon as you think about it, you render yourself inauthentic.
I was going to say that it's just like by everyone saying, let's be authentic, it's almost like...
So, well, she was saying too, as soon as your ego gets into it, as soon as you you are worrying about how other people will perceive it, you no longer authentic.
Right.
So in her, she defined it as surrendering yourself to who you are and not trying to become someone else. So that was her definition, which is kind of the opposite to someone like Coco Chanel, who had a very sort of like, she struggled as a young woman. She was orphaned. Her family was immensely poor. She wasn't going to let her history define her. So she wasn't about surrendering to the fact that she was a poor woman who a lot of people at that time would have said, well, you should be a seamstress and you know, stop there. So for her, authenticity also was about defining who you wanted to be. Yeah, and she had a great quote, which I did put in this book, and I'll say it because it is a good one. And it said, I have chosen the person I wanted to be and am. So someone might look at that and think, well, maybe there's some artifice in that as well. Right. And it was interesting because she was the same woman that said when times are tough, it actually triggers this intrinsic desire for authenticity. But how we define authenticity is different. You can be like Katie Lang, and it's you surrender yourself to who you are, and you don't try to or strive to be someone else. Or you're Coco, and you're emancipated. And that emancipation doesn't make you inauthentic, I don't think. Right. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's kind of both.
It's a paradox for sure.
And we were talking about earlier being like, I said, you know, Noreen, imagine there's going to be lots of women listening to this, and women that are all stages of their lives. And I always ask, you know, what piece of advice, and you're 25 years into this incredible career, if you could go back 25 years, what would you tell yourself? But you had an interesting answer. Can you share that? And the authentic Noreen, and how do you reach the staying authentic?
Well, you know, when you get a little bit older, people do often ask you that question.
I was not implying anything.
No.
young.
No, but because they think you're going to have this great wisdom today that you maybe didn't have back then. And for me, it's about reminding myself of what was kind of special about me at 25. Or I love to take risks. So we've talked about it. I ran Iraq.
But you still are.
And I was curious. I was relentlessly curious and open and trusting. And I wasn't afraid to fail.
Right.
No, and as you get older, you become less trusting, you get afraid to fail, you take less risks, all of those things. So for me, my advice would be don't forget who you were at 25 and tap into those kind of strengths that you have that you may not even appreciate that you have, but you do.
And I like that. And it's almost like exactly, I was thinking the opposite what you were going to say, but I think a lot more people could probably do that. I think it's, you know, and that's why when I talk to you, you could be 17 forever. You're always gallivanting the world every time. I'm in Paris now, and now LA, and now Mexico. I'm like, well,
like
keep
that.
up. Yes.
Well, you know, it's interesting when I had to make the decision to leave Elle and move to fashion. You know, it was an immensely stressful decision, and it was at that time I did have to think back. Well, what would you do when you were 25? You made all kinds of things, like you sold everything you owned and you lived out of a truck, for God's sakes. So don't lose that. That freedom that comes with being able to take risks. And I remember reading, you know, a quote not long ago, and I thought it was great. And it was all like, if you don't climb, you'll never fall. And it's really boring being at the bottom all the time, you know. So I like to climb. And I've had a few tumbles, but you just get back on and you climb up.
I like that. Yeah. You got some good ones today. We're gonna have a whole little book coming out of this. Well, I have a couple questions left, but the big one is you've had the opportunity to work with probably thousands of creative people, creative entrepreneurs, and you get to see so many different people doing different things, and all their processes are different. But when you're as a journalist too, you're always seeing patterns and you're always seeing narratives. If you look back, can you see a couple strong skill sets or personality traits that you notice, people that really stand out of all the creative entrepreneurs that you've worked with? Is there something that really sticks out that maybe you can share and kind of encourage anyone else that maybe has that inside of them, but it's something that you do notice?
I would say without exception, they are all absolutely in love with what they're doing and they're passionate about it. They're not thinking about it necessarily from a financial point of view or even a long-term point of view. I mean, maybe that can come later, but it's genuinely something that enables them to live and breathe and be. And just, again, this fellow that we worked with for November, special coverage, I can't tell you
You're
about.
killing me.
But he's an amazing artist.
Yeah.
And he talked about he was at St. Martin's studying fashion, and Louise Wilson at one point said to him, you are exceptional at what you do, but you're not meant to do this.
Wow.
You're an artist, you're a sculptor.
Wow.
And when he stepped back, at first he's like, well, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, I am meant to be a fashion designer.
Yeah.
But when he looked at his work, and he created one collection for her and one collection for himself, and when he actually thought about which one made him happiest, which one gave him meaning, it was his collection. And it was a sculptural, abstract, piece of art that would never, ever, be commercial on any level.
Right.
So she was absolutely right. But it's something, he said, it's a message that he's carried through with him for the rest of his life. He's always questioning himself.
Right.
Am I doing the thing that I'm most passionate about, that brings me joy? So that for sure.
Okay.
I would say they also have an optimism about them that inspires them and keeps them moving forward. I mean, it's sort of this balance between not being too naive, but I think sometimes, I think you if you're always pessimistic, if you're always thinking that things won't work out for you, or you're fearful, it really won't. And, it's funny, I just recently, when I was in Corsica with my husband and a good friend and my brother and his partner, we took two different paths to get to a city.
Yeah.
And we were going to meet up for lunch. And I thought, well, I'll go on, Google Maps. Surely we'll find a nice path. Well, of course, the path I chose, I thought, well, it's through the mountains. It's shorter. It's going to be beautiful. Like, they can take the main road. Main roads are for losers. So, I convinced my friend and my husband that we would take the path less traveled.
Of course you did.
And it was beautiful, except the path less traveled actually ended in a dirt path with cows.
Or a cul-de-sac.
And we were actually 6 kilometers away from the main road, which would have got us to the restaurant. But anyway, so we did have to turn back all the way. And as we eventually did meet up my brother for lunch, and it was funny, he sat down and he was saying to my husband and our friend, he said, you must know this about my sister. She is unreasonably optimistic. When all of the facts speak otherwise.
No.
You must never trust her in that regard. But I would say, back to your question, the other trait that they all seem to have is what I would call an unreasonable optimism about what they do and what their purpose is in life, and their steadfast determination to pursue it.
Well, that's good.
So optimism, passion, but having a little sense of of finance is probably a good idea too.
We won't get into that today.
But don't let that be your guiding source, unless that's your biggest passion.
Well,
if your biggest passion is making money, then that should be what drives you.
But being an entrepreneur, it's both. It comes in hand in hand, and that's awesome. I think we have gone longer than we had planned, but Noreen, thank you. This is I'm still so excited because I've thought about this for years, having this opportunity to someone like you that speaks and is such a great voice for the fashion here in Canada and for young women all around the world. So thank you. Give me a hug.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
I really, really, really appreciate it, and I'm so grateful.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode.